Hello and welcome. My name is Hannah, and let's sketch some faces. I've been working on my own version of the 100 Heads Challenge where I do 5 heads at a time with different mediums every time. So far, we have done charcoal with alcohol marker backgrounds, alcohol marker, oil pastels, paint markers, graphite pencils, and today we are doing soft pastels. Now, I have to warn you, I am not a pro at all with soft pastels, so there is a lot of learning in this one, and honestly, it's one of my favorite ones because there's so much exploration and trial and error just to figure out what the problem is. I am excited to say, first of all, that I figure it out. And once I figure it out, some really awesome stuff happens, but it takes a minute, so we'll get there. But if you are at all learning soft pastels, you might find this maybe helpful and we can learn together, but if you're a pro at soft pastels, you can probably tell in the first 5 seconds what the problem is. But the very first thing that we have to do, as always, is to slow down and sketch out the faces so that we have a good foundation to work off of. I'm actually really lucky because my Pinterest account, I pretty much only use it for faces these days. So it's learning that I want only faces, so I didn't have to search for very long before finding some really good ones. And I have pinned them on my Pinterest account if you're interested in following along and sketching these for yourself. I don't have that many pages on my Pinterest account, so you should find it pretty easy. But let's get started on coloring these up with soft pastels. Now I have to tell you from the very beginning, this first one does not look like a traditional soft pastel portrait, neither does the second one. It takes until the third one. So if you really want to skip forward and you're like, I don't care about the learning process, I want to see some good stuff, skip forward, I don't take it personally. But if you want to learn along with me, we're going to learn together here. It'll be so much fun. So I start off with this one, very hopeful, and it quickly, reality strikes. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is not what I thought soft pastels were supposed to do. What is wrong? But instead of really trying to figure it out, I just decided to truck through and see if I could make it work. And honestly, that was a little bit exciting to use a medium in a way that it's not supposed to be used. It feels like I'm living on the edge, and that's exciting. And this one does actually turn out cool. It's just not what soft pastels are supposed to look like. Now, the very first thing that kind of tipped me off to, hey, something's wrong, is these colors are not blending together easily at all. And I'm going to bring you in really close for this part so you can see specifically what I'm seeing. And every color that I lay down, regardless of color, the pastels are looking just yucky. Like, look at the hair. The hair is not blended together very well, and it almost looks clumpy. So I'm trying to mitigate that and seeing if I can make it not look clumpy. That's kind of my main challenge at this point. So I spent a good majority of this time just trying to figure out different methods of blending to see if any version of blending would work. I tried my finger, I tried the blending tool, and I tried a Q-tip. And honestly, none of them were giving me good results. It was as if they were trying to pull the pigment off of the paper. So every time that I used it to try to blend, it would just take the color off completely. So all of them were not a good idea, except for using a white between two colors, and that was the only thing that would blend the colors. It's not great, and it does dull down the colors, so it's not like an ideal situation, but I was excited that there was some workaround. But yeah, it's not an ideal situation here. I'm actually really tempted to tell you what the problem is right now, but then there would be no suspense. So you'll learn along with me. And if you know the answer, feel free to just rub it so hard in my face. I am okay with that. But yeah, if you know the answer, definitely 50 points to whatever house you're in Harry Potter. But I think actually I am going to tell you what the problem is, because then you'll kind of understand what's happening. But just know that I didn't know until after the second head. So I'm using the wrong paper. This is a Strathmore 400 mixed media sketchbook, and I thought it would be fine, but clearly I was wrong. Now, I had watched a handful of videos on people using soft pastels, and there was one that mentioned pastel matte or something about a pastel paper, and they didn't say how immensely important it was to have a pastel dedicated paper. I didn't know that paper mattered that much. Now, I am the type of stubborn person with learning that I have to make these mistakes, otherwise I will never know why. So I am glad that I made this mistake so that I know what happens when you do use the wrong paper. And you can tell me day in and day out that it is so important that you use soft pastel dedicated stuff for your soft pastel work. And I will do everything in my power to go against what you say just so that just so that my stubborn self can make the mistakes on my own, so that I have that firsthand reasoning for why it was the wrong choice. So I don't know if this is going to be helpful for you. If you're anything like me, this video is not going to help you. But on the off chance that you are wanting to learn soft pastels, this is your proof that paper does matter. And I don't get a new paper. There is a workaround, and I'm really excited to show you once I figure it out. Even though this isn't exactly the way that I expected this project to go, I'm still having so much fun. It's really fun to learn a new thing. It's really fun to figure out how to make it work. But ultimately for this very first one, I'm not really in problem-solving mode as far as getting the soft pastels to behave like soft pastels. I'm just trying to make it look like a good portrait. You know what I mean? So I was finding that the way to use these on bad paper was I kind of started to use these the way that I do with oil pastels. And that was the way that I found was giving me the best results when the paper isn't ideal. Now that I am looking back at this and watching it kind of as a viewer, it's kind of funny to see kind of how hard I was trying. I honestly think that I spent 2 hours on this first one just because I was fighting the medium so hard. And if I just knew what needed to happen from the beginning, this would have been so much easier. But this guy is pretty much done. I don't think he turns out bad at all, but I do think that he could have been so much better. So there we go. Now this second one, I was really excited about this portrait. I loved okay, hold on. I used a brush there because I had been blowing the dust away and I had been vacuuming the dust away, and I wanted to see if the brush would do anything different, and it made it worse. So I used the brush once and then I never do it again because it was horrible. But I was really excited to start this second portrait because her shapes were so interesting to me. She was very square because of the shape of her hair, and I was really excited to do a side profile, and her eyelids and her eyes were captivating to me. So I was going into this one very excited, but also remember how I said in the last one that I was trucking through it and I was excited to be using a product in a way that it wasn't supposed to be used, and that was exciting. But that excitement has worn off by now, and honestly, I'm feeling almost a little bit annoyed that it's still happening. But I mean, of course it's still happening. I haven't fixed anything. I'm just doing the same thing, and therefore what is the saying? I'm insane now because I'm doing the same thing and expecting different results. So I'm less excited about this one because I don't know how to fix the problem. So while I'm doing this, the whole time I'm thinking, what could possibly be the problem? Paper is nowhere on my mind. It is not on my radar whatsoever. So while I'm drawing this, I am kind of talking out loud to my husband, being like, it's doing this, it's not behaving well. I don't know what to do. And it's actually really funny because my husband is not an artist at all. And so I was talking through it with him, and he's like, well, maybe it's the paper you're using. So I thought that was really funny. And I heard that and I was like, ooh, do I have a crush on you? Is he right? So I start thinking about that while I'm drawing this. And I'm kind of like, okay, that kind of makes sense. I'm using this against the hair and it's not attaching to the paper. I'm using these colors and they're not blending because it's the paper. And it's just starting to make so much sense. So I start thinking about how I can move forward with the next 3 without having to, like, I've already done these first 2 and I don't want to redo them because it's part of the story of learning soft pastels. And I also want to keep all 5 together. So I'm trying to think, how can I move forward keeping all 5 of these together, but still having good results for the next 3. And I start researching really heavily on what I can do, if there's any kind of workaround, and there is. And I'm really excited to show you what I find. But I am almost done with this girl, so I'm gonna finish her up and then I will show you what I find. And we're gonna go on a quick little side quest to test out the new product. Okay, this is what I found. It is Pastel Ground. It's essentially a primer for your paper that gives it a really rough surface. But I was very skeptical that this would make that big of a difference. So I do a trial on the left side of the paper just to see, like, if it didn't make that big of a difference, I probably wouldn't have used it. And up close, this is what the texture looks like. It almost makes it look like a sidewalk. So that's kind of cool. It said to make it dry, let it dry for 30 minutes. So that's what that timer's for. And while that's drying, I want to give kind of like a side-by-side comparison from what I'm doing now to what it looks like with the new product. By the way, this is not sponsored at all. I found this on my own and I bought it with my own money, just FYI. Also, I am using a vacuum because one of the videos that I watched before this was using a vacuum and I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a good idea. Now, I wanted to see, this is essentially the same thing that I'm doing on the bottom here, but I'm doing lighter layers and more of them because if I could make it work this way and just do really, really light layers, but a lot of them, then I might have continued forward in case the product didn't work. And then I just do some random tests with white on top because that's what I was doing. And then I try with a peach color for like to see if the colors could show through underneath the peach color. You know what I mean? Like how opaque these were. Okay, side note really quick. I wrote down some search terms that I like to use on Pinterest that get me really good portraits, and I have very minimal AI problems when I use these terms. I wanted to talk about that with you, and so I am. Now I'm doing the very first layer, super, super light, barely any pressure. I wasn't blown away by the first layer, so I decided to go a little bit harder with more pressure and use my finger, and I was like, oh my goodness. Do you guys see the difference? I was in complete shock when I saw this. And there is an area right here that was a little bit see-through, so I wanted to see how I could fix that for when it happens in my portraits. And then I used the blending tool, and then the blending tool was taking it off again. So I don't really know what the deal is with the blending tool, but I decided that the finger was the best blending tool that I could use here, and it's free, so that's great. And here's a quick side-by-side, night and day difference. So now I have a little bit of a nervous situation here where I have the sketches already laid out, and I was really nervous to apply this over the sketches because I thought that it would be more opaque than this, but it's really not that big of a deal at all, and I can still see the sketch perfectly fine. It did make it a little bit gross looking, but it's gonna be painted over, so I'm not concerned about it at all. Okay. So now that the side quest is done and we have a solution, I am so excited to start on this third one. I decided to start with the darkest area first on the outside of his forehead and then blend into the middle of his forehead with the lighter colors. Really just so I could work from darkest to lightest and see how it would blend that way. And I am stunned at how easily this is blending and how smooth it's blending. And honestly, it's creating a lot less dust. It really surprised me, but I mean, I guess it makes sense because if the medium is actually attaching to the paper, it's not gonna have that much dust. So it's so cool. So the reason why I wanted to do the lightest layers last was so that the lightest colors could be pure. Like they wouldn't be contaminated with the darkest colors, and as long as you don't blend them afterwards, they're gonna stay the color that you put down. Now, there is another thing to consider here. So I am doing very small portraits here. And that's something that I really like to do. I think it's like a fun challenge, kind of. Now, this is the only scenario, the only medium that I've worked with so far that I would definitely say bigger is better. And that does kind of break my heart a little bit because I like working with small portraits, but the blending range on soft pastels is so wide, and you need, like, in order for it to be a really soft blend, you need to really blend it like at least an inch in every direction to get it to be a really soft blend. And it's really, really difficult to do that on this small of a portrait. Now, I still like how these turn out. I think they turn out really, really cool. They're probably one of my favorite portraits that I've done. This one and number 4 that I do today are my favorites, I think, of all time. But I want to talk about this portrait specifically that I'm doing. I have seen this guy on my Pinterest page for a long time, and I have not done him yet because I wasn't sure how to get the blurriness on his glasses, and like if I wanted to do the blurriness on his ears, I wasn't sure how I was going to do that. But I decided to try it today, and it was effortless to get the blur down. The glasses specifically, I was really, really proud of because all I needed to do was just add a layer of white and just smudge it out. And then have little details on his eyes, and that made it really easy to make it just look blurry, because if you add less details and smudge it, there you go, it's blurry. The thing that I was finding the hardest now that I have like the paper situation figured out is how to get a very small line. And even with the very crispy edge of these pastel sticks, you can't do it. Even when I could do it with oil pastels, I can't do it with these ones. Now, I could have used pencils. I know that there's a thing as soft pastel pencils, but I don't have the colors that I would need to do a portrait. I have like 6 colors, and they're all bonkers colors that wouldn't make any sense in a portrait. So I decided to have this be a challenge where I only use pastel sticks, and it's really fun to kind of lean into that aspect of it. Lean into like the softness and the blurriness, and it almost feels like a picture that's out of focus. Like you can still see everything, but yeah, everything is just a little bit blurry, and it kind of tricks your eyes into seeing details that maybe aren't there. And I think that's always like a really cool thing. One thing that I was learning is that the more dust you have on the paper, the more easily and softly it will blend. So I was kind of using that to my advantage. And if I didn't want it to blend, so how do I explain this? Like if I didn't want the blending range to be like 5 inches long, and I wanted it to be like a short blending range, then I would take away the dust before I blended it, and then that would make it so that the blending distance is much shorter, and I don't need like a whole 5 inches to blend it completely. Does that make sense? Okay, so this guy is done. Do you see the difference between this one and the last two? Because I am like, I am truly amazed and just really excited about using soft pastels now. Now it's time to move on to the next one. I've already started, and since I had such good luck starting with darkest to lightest in the last one, I decided to do that same thing here. Also, I feel like a hamster whenever I blend with my pointer finger. So I ended up using my middle finger for most of the time just because it made me feel like a human still. Whenever I'm looking for portraits on Pinterest, I'm always looking for the same kind of criteria. The first is that it can't be AI, or as far as I can tell, there's no AI in it. But aside from that, the things that I look for in my portraits that I like to do are different skin tones, different genders, and different ages, and also different ways that the heads are facing. I don't want all of my heads to face me or face right or face left. I kind of like there to be a different, like a wide variety of ranges of ways that the heads are facing. That was easier to understand than I thought it was going to be. Now, I know myself, and I know that a side profile is always the hardest thing, and I knew that this one was going to be the hardest portrait for me today because not only is it a side profile, but she's looking up. And how do you mix those two things together? You're adding a tilt into a side profile, and that just makes it like 20 times harder for me. I struggled so hard with two things on this. I struggled with her ear and with her eye. Where on earth were they supposed to go? So I struggled a lot with those two things on the sketch, and my hands are super dirty, so I had to go wash them. Now, that is one thing that you're gonna have to deal with when you are using your fingers to blend. And once you blend dark colors and then it's stuck on your finger, the next time that you blend, you're gonna be adding that dark color onto your next thing that you're gonna blend. So you have to be really careful when you use your fingers. I actually didn't show you too much of it in the video, but every time that I am blending with my finger, I rub it on the cloth next to me so that I kind of get rid of as much pigment as I can before I blend it again. And you can only do that so many times before it's just overloaded in your skin and you have to go wash your hands again. We talked about the things that I struggled with the sketching portion, which were the ears and the eye. And now that I'm coloring it up, do you want to know what the hardest thing was? Because I'm going to tell you. They were the eye, getting like a very good dusty eye on her with her makeup, because I didn't want to go overboard and overblend and push her eyelashes even further up. And also not coloring outside of the lines, like outside of the outside line of her face. That was really, really hard and tricky because this medium is just a dusty medium. So you're not gonna get very crisp outside lines. The way that I found was the easiest for me to kind of deal with that is go over the outside edges with a white and kind of bring it back in and just kind of embrace the blurriness of what soft pastels are. But she is almost done, so I'm going to finish her up and then we will move on to the fifth and final portrait. I was so excited when I saw this portrait show up on my Pinterest page. I was so quick to say, yes, I want to do this one. She looks angelic because of the colors that are there, and also I want to embrace the differences of all of us that are here on Earth. So while she is a lighter skin toned person, the same, like I already have a lighter skin toned person here, I didn't care about that at all because she is different and we need to embrace difference as people. So I added her and I'm so happy about that. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but when I did the initial sketch for the whole page, she was much smaller. And when I was doing the second portrait, I was having such a hard time with all of the really small details that I ended up redrawing this one to be bigger so that I wouldn't have such a problem with the small details. And I'm really happy that I did that, but I think that I lost some accuracies in her facial structure, which is a huge bummer. And I didn't really realize how off I had it until I was all the way done. And we'll talk about that a little bit more because I do try to fix it and I make it a little bit better, but yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there. Now, for her, there were so many colors on her face, and I was so thrilled to be doing this one just so that I could add every color. But I think that my excitement got the best of me because I did forget the core thing that I have learned so far, which is the more dust that you have on your portrait, the better it's gonna blend. So I was finding that every time that I would add a new color, I wouldn't have enough of like a base color to blend into. So the blending is a little bit rigid. It's not as blendy as I think that I was hoping it would be. And yeah, that was just purely my excitement about this one. I went too fast on this one, and I wish that I slowed down a little bit. I don't think that I've mentioned at all, but these soft pastels were gifted to me from my mother-in-law. She had them and then she hadn't used them for a long time, so she asked if I wanted them and I said absolutely. So I'm not sure if you can find this exact set on anywhere, but you can definitely still find Soft Pastels by Faber-Castell. I just don't know if it would have the same packaging as this one. And I'm not sure if they've updated the colors that come in their 24 pack. This is a 24 pack, by the way. And that is one thing that was a little bit tricky, was to blend the colors, the limited color palette, and blend them in a way that looked like a good skin tone for what I needed it to be for each person. So some of these are not very accurate to what the reference looks like, but honestly, I don't think that's that big of a deal because we're all just having fun, you know? Now, I was a little bit nervous to start moving into these teeth because it's such a small thing and small details without a pencil is going to be really almost impossible. So I did the best that I could, and I like how the teeth look now. But then I got a little nervous to continue with the mouth, so I moved on to the nose and got the nose like halfway done, and then I moved back to the mouth again. And since I have to blend out with my finger to get the best results, I smudge out her teeth. And I'm so bummed about that because when I redraw her teeth, they don't come back the same way, and it's just a little bit of a bummer, but that's just kind of what's gonna happen when you're using your finger to blend. And you know, what can you do? If you've been following along with any of my other videos, you know that I have been kind of nervous about continuing this 100 Heads challenge because I don't know that many mediums very well. But after this one and seeing the growth between the first and the last one, I feel much more excited to continue this in the future. Even if I don't know the medium, I think it's still gonna be really fun. So that's exciting. Now, I think that you can probably tell by now that I did her proportions wrong when I sketched out her face, and that is such a bummer, but that is something also that I struggle with a lot when I'm sketching faces at a bigger proportion. Whenever I draw big faces, it's like, where on earth should the eye go? Where should the nose go? And it would help a lot if I drew like lines and grids and all these things, but that to me kind of takes the fun out of it. I don't know, I feel like I just have a lot of fun when I struggle a lot. But I'm coming to the point in the portrait where I start to notice that something is wrong, and I try to fix it without redoing everything. So this one is going to have a lot of problem solving and seeing how we can work with soft pastels to fix mistakes. So remember how I said that it blends really well when you have a good base, like a lot of powder to blur into? I remembered that, so I did a quick layer of white underneath so that the pink and orange that I added on top could blend into it itself, you know? Now, I realized that this eyebrow is now too high, so I'm gonna try to cover it up with more layers of soft pastel to try to get the skin tone accurate again so that I can re-add in the eyebrows. And I'm very happy to tell you that fixing mistakes is very easy. And I do totally realize that that is so much easier said than done, because there's a huge mistake that I made on this that I don't know how to fix. And it is that I got her proportions so wrong, and that's so heartbreaking because I really wanted to do this one well. And I got her mouth placement wrong, and also I made her face too wide, which really altered the proportions a lot. And really the only way that I could have fixed it at this point is to start all the way over, which is just that much more proof that doing a good job on your initial sketch is so important to take your time with. But since I am almost done with her, I will finish her up and then we will number these out and see how the whole spread looks all together. So this is how all 5 heads turned out, and I am so happy with how this one turned out. Even though there are things that are not perfect about it, I still feel really proud of myself for having learned a new medium and figuring out how to use it in the best way that works for me. So that's always really exciting and really fun, and I hope this video helped you at all, or if nothing else, that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I will see you in the next one. Toodaloo!